Thank you for joining us today. This is 5 minutes of relaxation. All you have to do is get comfortable. Close your eyes. Focus on your breathing. Hear, but don't listen, as I read random passages from really old books. This 5 minutes is just for you. Let the real world float away. Feel the tension leave you. Starting now. Miss Heredith turned her steps towards the house. The guests had dispersed while she was saying farewell to Captain Nepcote, and nothing further was expected of her as a hostess until dinner time. It was her daily custom to devote a portion of the time between tea and dinner to superintending the arrangements for the latter meal. The moat house possessed a competent housekeeper and an excellent staff of servants, but Miss Heredith believed in seeing to things herself. The under-gardener touched his cap and hastened away on his errand. Miss Heredith leisurely resumed her walk to the house, stopping occasionally to pluck up any weed which had the temerity to show its head in the trim flower beds which dotted the wide expanse of the lawn between the moat and the house. She entered the house through the porch door and proceeded to the housekeeper's apartments. Her knock at the door was answered by a very pretty girl, tall and dark, who flushed at the sight of Miss Heredith and stood aside for her to enter. A middle-aged woman, with a careworn face and large gray eyes, dressed in black silk, was seated by the window sewing. She rose and came forward when she saw her visitor. She was Mrs. Rath, the housekeeper, and the pretty girl was her daughter. There are faces which attract attention by the expression of the eyes, and the housekeeper's was one of them. Her face was thin, almost meager, with sunken temples on which her graying hair was braided, but her large eyes were unnaturally bright and had a strange look, at once timid and watchful. She now turned them on Miss Heredith, as though she feared a rebuke. Miss Heredith flushed slightly at the deliberate rudeness of the action, but did not press the request. She left the room, softly closing the door behind her. She walked slowly along the wide passage which hung with bugle tapestry, and paused for a while at a narrow window at the end of the gallery, looking out on the terrace gardens and soft green landscape beyond. The interview with her nephew's wife had tried her, and her reflections were rather bitter. For the 20th time, she asked herself why her nephew had fallen in love with this unknown girl from London who loathed the country. From Miss Heredith's point of view, a girl who smoked and talked slang lacked all sense of the dignity of the high position to which she had been called, and was in every way unfitted to become the mother of the next male Heredith, if indeed she consented to bear an heir at all. It was Miss Heredith's constant regret that Phil had not married some nice girl of the county in his own station of life, instead of a London girl. Sir Philip Heredith was a dignified figure of an English country gentleman of the old type. He was tall and thin, aristocratic of mien, with white hair and faded blue eyes. His face was not impressive. At first it seemed merely that of a tired old man, weary of the paltry exactions of life and longing for rest. But at odd moments, one caught a passing resemblance to a caged eagle in a swift turn of the falcon profile, or in a sudden flash of the old eyes beneath that straight Herodith brow. At such times, the Herodith face, the warrior face of a long line of fierce fighters and freebooting ancestors, leapt alive in the aging features of the last but one of the race. Under the influence of the good wine, the guests brightened up considerably as the meal proceeded. Sir Philip, in his old-fashioned way, raised his glass of aerated water to one another of the young men. He was an ideal host, and his unfailing polished courtesy hid the fact that he was looking forward to the breakup of the party with a relief akin to that felt by the majority of the guests. Conversation had been confined to monosyllables at first, but became quite flourishing and animated as the dinner went on. Miss Herodith smiled and looked pleased. As a hostess, she liked to see her guests happy and comfortable, even if she did not like her guests.